Hello, everyone. I've had a little 3-year hiatus, but I'm back. I had told you, I think it was April of 2023, that I would have the second video in the series of Are We in the End Times, and it was pertaining to 2027. And so that's what I'm going to be presenting with you today. And I'm just doing this off the cuff. I'm not going to be like doing any super editing. So all mistakes are my gift to you to show you that I'm human. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen so that I can bring my slides up. And of course, my slides did not come up. Okay. So we're going to just pause this. Okay, let's start this again. Oh, 3 years and I'm a little rusty. So let me try to share my screen again. My PowerPoint should work this time. Let's find out, shall we? And yay, there we go. You should be able to see this now. Okay, so this 2027 presentation is going to be primarily about human design, or what I suppose what human design talks about when it comes to a transition that's going to occur in February of 2027. And in actuality, it has already happened. We're in it already, but the final flyby, if you will, is going to be February 15th of next year. Okay. There we go. My slides are going to be all over the place, so my apologies. February of 2027, it is the beginning, well, the end and the beginning of a 400-year cycle. And this cycle is going to be taking us out of large-scale institutions and systems. And it's going to be the end of kind of the more tribal and collective way of being. So it's the conclusion of the collective we era. Here we go. And we are going to be moving into, it says the individual I sovereignty. So we're moving into an era of the individual. So individualism. Now, this isn't happening overnight. It will take time, but in that process, we're already seeing it, kind of this shakeup, and it's global. But for the sake of us talking about this, it's moving away from really kind of a collectivism where there's everything has to do with the collective, and even tribalism where there's not just sharing like in a collective, but there's tribal support. But you have to follow the rules. You have to stay within the boundaries of the guide and rules of the tribe. And this is going to happen in a collective way as well. So, we can see collectivism all over the world. There is a tendency more towards individualism here in the United States. But I think from what we look at for when we're in that final flyover for February of 2027, that it'll be interesting to see, quite frankly, how the world is at that time, and particularly the United States, because right now I talked about in my video, video 1 of this series about Uranus, which is like revolution, things happening out of the blue and just suddenly, depending on what it might be connected with, it could even be, sudden war. We're seeing this, and we're seeing revolution happen if we look in right now, I'm doing this on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th of 2026. And there's a revolution happening in Iran. So I mean, and I'm sure there's other places too, but there's active revolution there. And we're seeing that as part of, if we want to, as part of this transformation, going from, planning and making sure that everything, all the ducks are in a row to fit in. So it's we have a tendency to want to homogenize so that we want everybody to be the same. But as we transform and go into this other era of the individual, it's about the individual sovereignty and the individual's empowerment. So we are about empowerment. Now, some of us, when we look at a body graph in human design, some people, we call it circuitry, but there's also thematic. And there are some people who are more individual. And I'm one of those people. So to me, I'm thinking, yay, because it's a time of individuation. It's a time of being a sovereign self, and that you are empowered to whatever it is that you want to create, what you desire. And there's no having to follow rules of a tribe so that you don't get kicked out of it or whatever. But at any rate, so it's reliance, sovereignty, reliance, and empowerment, and a self-empowerment, and also empowerment of other. We rely on our inner authority as far as making decisions and our own authenticity. So if our inner being wants to, I'm just going to make something up here, wants to be an artist, but we're told that, I mean, this is typical, that you're supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer or something, so it's like, it's family, but it's like this tribal rule. And by being an artist or something outside the parameters of those rules, then you're an outcast. You have to follow the rules. And in this era that we're coming into is not that way. It's more individual empowerment. Now, there are going to be some tribal connections that will be maintained, but it's as we flow more heavily into the era of the individual, we will see that individuation and individualism increase. And it's also about emotional awareness and clarity. So there's a tendency that, especially as a business person, an entrepreneur, I have mentors and they're like, you have to make a decision quickly. And I'm not one of those people who can. I have to think on it. I have to weigh out the pros and cons. I have to sleep on it. And we're in this time of the individual. That shift is going to include that you need to think about it, before you make decisions. You want to increase your clarity. You want to increase your awareness. Decisions and truth will come slowly and emerge slowly. So for those who are like rush, 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 the need for patience so that you can have emotional clarity is important. What they talk about in human design is that there's going to be an alteration in the biochemistry in the nervous system. Whether that, how that goes about in the actual physical body, I'm really not sure. They have some things written about it. I won't go into detail here because it's beyond the scope of this. But if you wanted to, you could look it up on the internet. There's websites and stuff that people are talking about it, YouTube videos, etc. And they believe that it's going to be more spirit infused individual awareness. And so in this time, in human design, they say that a new human is going to be born. And these are new births coming, within the next 10 years or whatever it's going to start. I think it started already, actually. But the founder of human design called these new humans raves. Why raves? I don't know, but that's the word he used. And that they will be incarnating and coming into life post 2027. Like I said, I believe that they are already here, that they have already started to be born. And these children will have a heightened sensitivity. They call it hive consciousness, but they're small groups, like five or less, that they will conglomerate with. They'll have limited conventional speech. Um, Again, this is predictions by the founder of human design. I call it predictions. They believe it's fact, but I really don't know. I'm just sharing what I know. And so they'll have limited conventional ability to speak and muscle strength differences. And there's evolutionarily beyond Homo sapiens. Now, the founder, Ra, he called his, I don't remember what his birth name is, but he had changed his name to Ra Uruhu. So we just call him Ra. Ra talked about this, and he used to call us, with the humans that are now, Homo sapiens intransitus. And so we are that transitory part before this new human comes in, the new Homo sapiens. And they talk about them being challenging for parents because they're going to be, very heightened sensitivity, and they believe, a lot of human design people believe, that autism may be an indicator for this new human. I'm just going to throw this out there. I threw this out there in one of the classes. I've been taking human design for 8 years now, and studying classes. I've been attending classes all that time, and it's getting certifications. And anyway, it's kind of, I'm addicted, but it's like things I just have to learn. But how I was viewing this, because if we're going to have this change in human, I was saying, and especially since we've got AI coming in and all this stuff, I'm like, are we sure that we're not talking about a transhuman, and that this new human is going to be part of transhumanism? Think about that. Am I right? No one comments on it. When I say that, they just listen, but no one comments on it. I think people are a little nervous about talking about it, but I have to say that, and I had mentioned that like 3 or 4 years ago in class, and no one said anything. So I just thought that's kind of interesting that, everybody's like, yeah, whatever. But it sure makes sense to me. So anyway, yeah, the rave, the new human coming in. And there's gonna be changes in paradigms that go after 2027 and beyond, because again, that 400-year cycle, it's a 400 years of collectivism and the hangouts of tribalism. And now we're going into the individual. So you're going to see governments change, education change, healthcare, finance, big businesses. They believe that old systems will be collapsing. And so that the small self-sustaining villages, and that's, each community, they will have this is how I see it. Like, people who have their plots of land, but there is a community, and that each household or whatever is like 5 or less people, and that it's local and peer-to-peer networks and self-employment, craftsmanship will have, and it's probably going to be better anyway if we're looking at farmers markets and things like that. So it's going to go from growth, logic, and external authority to intuition, personal experience, and inner guidance. So embracing inner authority. And so there's a greater emphasis on that of the individual, and really following one's own inner compass, and replacing reliance on institution, experts, or social norms. It doesn't mean that people won't look to experts for for advice and information, but they have to trust their own inner authority, their inner knowing, instead of just blindly following. I think that's pretty much where this wants to go to. So you have to trust yourself and really kind of rely on your own inner wisdom. So radical responsibility, there's, selective intentional engagement. So quality over quantity and energy management. And that's just not like, trying to conserve energy. That's also in one's own being. Aligning with one's unique type and design. And that in human design, there's 4 types, and in one of those types, there's a subtype. And then the design is the body graph. I don't have a picture of a body graph here, but that's again beyond what I really want to cover. And so energy management in that regard, according to your own design. And there's a belief that we will be able to accelerate manifestation and that we move into conscious living. So they also believe there's a perceived speeding up of time and quicker fruition of intentions as frequency rises. Now, you may have heard about people who believe in ascension and going into 5D and things like that, from 3D to 4D to 5D. But this could relate to that. But I just heard someone speaking on a podcast and talking about how they are already feeling like time is speeding up, and that they're recognizing how things are moving faster. And so in this time frame of 2027 and beyond, it encourages heart-centered, abundant, sovereign living and conscious choices like ethical consumption, mindful eating, care for the earth. And that's all great and wonderful. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, and stopping, you may not believe in this, but I do, chemtrails, the desire to block the sun, which can create problems of its own. And I'll get to that when we get closer to the end. So this is more encouragement of living a sustainable life and making individual choices that benefit oneself and the planet and, everyone else too. And this is the scary part to me, because technology and AI evolution, now some may say that that's part of this transformation that we're going to be going through, that actually we are going through. But there's going to be a massive increase in technological and AI advancement, and we're already seeing that. That's already happening. But the way technology advances, it's just gets exponential. And my concern is that if we're supposed to be conscious of resources and things on the planet and not hurting the planet, that data centers that have to be used for that AI technology, they use a lot of water. And I saw that, I think it's China, that they're actually putting the data centers in the ocean and using the ocean water to keep them cool. But then you're heating the ocean, and that has its own problems. So neutral tools that depend on human use and focus on ethical, heart-centered applications rather than fear or control. And quite honestly, regardless if it's a heart-centered application, we have to find a better way that these technologies can be run and used so that we are not actually being counterproductive in what we're trying to do to help the planet, so to speak, and really quite directly. And then there's one other thing, and that's the potential for a grand solar minimum. And a grand solar minimum is when the sun reduces its solar activity, and it becomes kind of a quiet sun. And what happens is that when there's long periods of really slow solar activity, the heat from the sun and the light from the sun becomes less to the earth. And when that happens, the earth gets cooler. and you have harsher winters in some areas. And I think we're kind of seeing this already. And what makes it worse is that here, if they are doing what I think they're doing in some places, is when they're using the chemtrail thing, they're trying to block out the sun. So they're only exacerbating the problem, or they're making the problem happen before it even begins in the sun. And so, we really have to be conscious. Now, government sites will say that this grand solar minimum is not going to happen. It's not happening. And that because of climate change and warming, that it actually is just going to zero it out. So some will say it's not happening, but others will say it doesn't matter if it happens because man-made climate change is going to zero it out. But that when I looked at non-government sites, there's experts out there in the field of climatology, astrophysics, that they believe that it's about time for the grand solar minimum to happen because it is cyclical. In fact, one took place, I think it was between 1645 and 1715. It even had a name. I think that was the Malden minimum, something like that during that time. So for the 2027, these predictions for the grand solar minimum that I heard about in the past were between 2025 and 2030. And 2027 sits right in the middle of that. So who knows? I'm just sharing information here. So I just wanted to be able to provide this information because I said I was going to do it like 3 years ago. So I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it also sparked your interest enough to start looking into some of these things so that you can further your own personal education and knowledge about these things. So again, I got here 3 years late, but here's the information that I told you I would have. I'll stop sharing my screen. All right, everyone. I hopefully I'll get some more back on here. Some more videos, long form videos. I have lots of shorts that go up, but this is something that I hope I will have again before 3 years is up. All right, everyone. Thank you.